Welcome everybody to the third period, stripped down edition here. I'm your host Darren Baskerjan, and with me as always is Vasil Neshev. Not with us is either Rehan Sarwar or Sean Guerrero. It's just us today. Rehan was supposed to be here but could not make it. Maybe he's partying too hard after the big Asian Express victory. We're not entirely sure, but what we do know is that we're going to be looking at leagues B, D, E, and F. We're cycling back around now sorry guys, before we go any further, my producer, Eagle at Master Control, is giving me a stupid look. I don't know why.
Look here.
I am looking there. Oh God. Alright, so as you can see, it's going to be a very interesting show today. We're looking at B, D, E, and F, and we're just going to kind of, again, we're cycling back around. We're much further along than we were last time, and at the same time, we're going to kind of hit a few spots that we didn't because it was so early on in the season. Prior to that, we're also going to look at some key matchups now that the playoffs are coming closer and closer, and so let's take a look at that. Let's start off in the B League. Vasil, we've got the River Rats at 4-1, Viella at 3-3-1, Down to Puck at 3-2-1, Stacked at 3-3, PC Crisis at 3-4, and the Dog Pound at 1-6. First, looking at these standings here, any surprises? What has changed since the last time we looked at this league?
Two big things, looking at it real quick. River Rats, we were unsure about at the beginning of the season. We weren't, like, they were behind on games. We didn't know if they were bringing their full roster, but obviously they've really brought it. They're 4-1 with less games played. They're in first place. And the other surprise, PC Crisis, who was, I believe, 2-0 or maybe 3-0 last time we spoke about them, and consecutive losses since. Now they're at the bottom of the pack with Dog Pound. So that's the changes. Not necessarily surprising, but that's the difference from the last time.
And so right now, we look at River Rats at 8 points, Viella at 7, Down to Puck at 7, Stacked and PC Crisis at 6, Dog Pound really bringing up the rear with only 2 points here. We don't know exactly what the playoff structure is going to be yet, so we can't really predict that or go look at that. But for Dog Pound, is this a situation where basically it's playoff scenario as of right now?
Exactly. They have, they have the 1 win in 7 games.
Yeah.
Only 14 goals, 4 in 7 games, so they're not scoring too much. It would appear off the first glance that they're a little outmatched by the rest of the division. But they have a really big matchup coming up on the 22nd of July against PC Crisis, and to me that is going to determine whether they even have a chance of trying to push for the playoffs or not, because the PC Crisis is a team they're trailing. If the playoff structure is in fact the top 4 go through and the bottom 2 are out, I wouldn't think Dog Pound can make it. But if it's top 2 get a bye and then the other 4 play each other, then they're in, and whatever momentum they build before the end will hopefully help them out.
So you mentioned one key matchup there with the Dog Pound and PC Crisis, obviously the last 2 place teams in this league. Do you have any other key matchups that we could keep an eye on as the season goes on?
I mean, there's always the middle of the pack teams. They're all really close. They're 1 point
Often
apart.
Those are the best games, though.
Exactly. I mean, you got Viella playing Stack that same day, a few hours after them. That's going to be a really nice matchup. Viella, by the way, were 0-3 when we spoke about them the first time, and they've turned it around, 3-0-1 since then.
I mean, you guys were a bit surprised at them being 0-3 at the time as well, so you guys called it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was surprised to see PC Crisis 3-0 or 2-0, whatever it was at the time. So, the division is unfolding the way we thought it would.
Don't injure yourself patting yourself on the back so hard, Vasil. No, but so basically, like you said, it's a very tight division with the exception of the last place team. Right now, there's 2 points separating the top spot and the before last spot. So really, this could still change quite a bit as the season unfolds.
Right, they seem to be exactly halfway through. Some teams have played 6, some teams have played 7 games.
Yeah.
So the rest is still to see. But I really hope Dog Pound could elevate their game to at least not seem like they're mismatched against the rest of these teams.
What a finish that would be if they're also able to elevate their game. Yeah. When we started doing this whole format, we didn't really have a chance to look at the top players, or because we didn't really know how the rosters were looking. We just mentioned the few names that we did know for sure.
Yeah.
Who are the top players right now as we're more than halfway through the season for some teams? Who are some of the top players that have caught your eye, either statistically or that we know are going to be big factors the rest of the way?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back again for this one, but this one was obvious. Every time he plays, Matt Hart leading the league in scoring for Stacked. He's a huge asset for them and a big factor into their success. Also, Troy Ryan for PC Crisis putting up a heck of a season, leading them in scoring. Like I said, I mean, it's not surprising he's that good from the blue line. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be too many standout guys that are really leading their teams. I noticed River Rats have a very steady roster, not necessarily any superstars, but they're 4-1 sitting in first place. Jordan Velenosi, who I met last summer, doesn't regularly play for them, but he's putting up really good numbers. So I guess we could mention his name in there as well, although he won't have played a full season. And that as far as standout players, I think that would be it. The rest are very just they work as a unit.
Right, and that's the key in these higher divisions, right? It's not. Yes, there's excellent players, of course. These are guys that if you drop them down in 3 or 4 leagues, they'll destroy everyone. And in some cases they do.
Yeah.
But I think, like you're saying, the key is really just how you play. I mean, you're a guy who's played in higher divisions. You know what it's like. We were talking about it before we got on the air. It's about how you play with as a team.
Positioning.
You trust your teammates to be in their right spots. You don't even have to look. You know exactly where they are. That's something we don't see as much of in the lower division. So that's the key, guys. B League, man. This is where it's at. It's a really entertaining league to look at. You can see by the standings.
Right.
Anything else before we move down to D?
Not much. I mean, it does seem to be a very properly balanced division, unfortunately, so far for Dog Pound. So that's interesting.
All right, let's move down to D then. We've got the Angry Birds at the top of the list. Then we've got the Sharpshooters, the TJs, Los Pipos, Souvlaki Kings, Lynx, Cray-America, Asian Express, the Team, and Prestige Worldwide bringing up the rear. Seems to be a pretty top-heavy division. I mean, we're seeing a couple teams that are really ahead of the pack in the Angry Birds and the Sharpshooters at 15 and 14 points.
Even the TJs,
and
I would
TJs
throw
are
in there
quite
with
good
only
as well.
one loss. Yeah.
Again, we played against them week 1. You don't need to tell me that TJs are good.
Yeah.
And then Los Pipos, Souvlaki Kings, Lynx, Cray-America, Asian Express, the Team, more middle of the pack, although it's the middle bottom.
Yeah.
And then again, we have a team that's at the bottom, Prestige Worldwide, that's a little bit further back. So, first of all, since the last time we looked at this, what's changed? What do we need to know? What are some surprises, if any?
Well, the Sharpshooters are a big surprise, still remaining undefeated. Very impressive.
The only undefeated team right now.
The only
after
undefeated
Angry Birds
team,
just
right.
lost, right?
Angry Birds with a big upset. Well, Asian Express with a big upset against Angry Birds. Huge win. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they won 5-2 last night, which is huge for Asian Express's boost towards the playoffs. Again, Sharpshooters, the only undefeated team, I would say was the biggest surprise. Other changes since the last time we spoke, Los Pipos, again. They've only lost 1 game since then, 4-1-1. They're doing great. They have a lot of momentum, and all their star players are there, so they're really, really getting into their own. Souvlaki Kings are a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
But a few known names actually on there, so they're not. It's not that surprising.
No, they're a solid team.
But yeah,
they're a solid team. We played against them. They know what they're doing. Let's put it that way. They're not out of place here.
Yeah, 500 in this type of division is impressive. The team I'm a little surprised with hanging that low in the pack. They don't seem to be falling behind by the scores, but they're not getting all the points they need, at least for a push to the playoffs. I'm looking at them. They have a few big matchups coming up. The Lynx, they played Prestige Worldwide, I believe, on the 30th, but we don't have a result for that game yet. So that game is huge for both those teams. I mean, they're the bottom 2 teams in the division. So whoever wins that, basically,
is in a good position. Let's put it that way. Yeah, especially with Prestige being 3 points back of the last spot.
Yeah.
I mean, again, not knowing exactly the playoff structure, it's hard for us to predict, but it's still, you don't want to be that far back at this situation.
In this type of division, I would assume it's bottom 2 are out and top 8 play 1 versus 8.
Logical.
Versus
makes
7,
sense. Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
From what we've seen in the past. Cray-America is doing well also. It's nice to see they have some points and they have a bit of a cushion on the bottom 2 teams.
Not enough, if you ask me.
Yeah,
need a little bit more for me to breathe
It's going to be
easy,
tough. They have a big matchup coming up in a week and a half against Los Pipos.
Yeah,
and you guys are going to see firsthand the talent I was talking about previously on Los Pipos.
I don't want to see it. I hope they get a flat tire on the way there. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I'm just saying maybe don't show up on time. That's it.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so those are any other key matchups you didn't get a chance to mention yet, or are those the big ones that jumped out at you?
There is a big one. TJs and Sharpshooters, right? 19th of July. That is a Battle of the Tyrants. I would like to see if TJ Ward is back in the lineup for the TJs. If he is, it's going to be a lot for Sharpshooters to handle. And I'm surprised Angry Birds lost. Their roster is unreal. They have every single player on the team has at least a point a game. With guys like Danny Gentile, Peter Carvurianis, Connor Gagnon averaging over 3 points a game. Their numbers are just... I've never seen anything like that.
Look at their goals scored. They're far and away ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, they've scored 17 more goals than the next team chasing them.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous amount if you think about it.
If you look at the top scorers in the league, it's just it's
all
unreal.
them, right?
They have 4 guys that have more goals than games.
Yeah.
That's 4 guys that will show up for you and
That's
score
crazy.
minimum a goal every game. You're gonna win your games, even if you don't have a good goalie. But they do. They have Brad Johns and John Verdes, from what I saw in there, and that's 2 of the best goalies in the league.
So for you, Angry Birds is still the head of the class.
Heavily favorite team. Always played in this type of division, and I've always had cycling power weapons like Danny Gentili. In the past, they've had Eric Fay, Alex Cannell, and Manny Kurtoglu, but they seem to just cycle them out and work with the cap and always be a top team. And their goal differential is plus 37 in 8 games.
That's ridiculous. It's not even fair.
Yeah.
But they've lost one. They've tied once.
So
It's
they're
there.
beatable.
It's
They're
beatable.
beatable, yeah.
Anyone's beatable, right? So I mean, you just need things to go your way. Maybe if you guys aren't playing the right game, maybe they're
thrown
frustrated.
off,
They're not thinking. They get
right?
penalties. They get hurt. They don't show up. I mean,
Yeah.
anything can happen. It's hockey's that kind of a game. Again, we didn't talk about top players last time we were here. Obviously, you mentioned a few guys that stand
Yeah.
out to you, but is there anybody else that has caught your eye so far in this season?
Yeah, I mentioned him last time, the captain of Los Peoples, Alex Haddad. He's putting up really good numbers and setting up the play. Usually he's more of a goal scorer, but now he's actually, I guess he's leading the team with his playmaking ability. I see him and Danny Gentili being at the top as far as, like, offensive threats. And who was, Mick Manassa. For your team.
Yes.
Put in a heck of a season, and I'm assuming he's playing defense,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Always, and he's just so good. So good, and he's putting up the numbers to match it this year, so...
And the scary thing is, honestly, I don't feel like he's playing that great this year. I think I think he can do better. So I'm just, yes, I'm a little bit throwing him under the bus, but I'm also trying to get him going.
Even more
Mick's,
so than he already
Mick's a
is,
great
right?
player, and it's difficult for us because we've got some people. A lot of people have missed the last 2-3 weeks, but I'm sure we're not the only ones.
Right.
Obviously, there was the World Ball Hockey Championships. We lost a very good
Yes.
player to that tournament. So it's going to be an exciting stretch run, I think, for this whole division. The D League looks really, really good.
Right.
You're a very nice guy, Vasil. People like you.
Wow.
It's time for you to make some enemies. If we're saying the top 8 make it, who are the 2 teams that won't?
I have a hard time admitting this, but the way it stands right now, the team seems to be out. I've played against them almost every year that I've been around for the last 4 years, 5 years, 6 years even. They're always really good, and it's hard for me to see how they're struggling so hard with the roster that they have. They have most of their usual guys. They've had Matt Hart in the past, and they don't have him this year, but they've always worked around that. So it's really surprising for me to see them that low, and I'm gonna have to stick with it and say that if 2 teams aren't making it, it would be the team and Prestige Worldwide.
So the 2 teams that are at the bottom.
Yes.
You're really going out on a limb here.
No,
I'm just
well,
kidding. No, I get you. You see what you see. You know what you see.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah. So, guys from the team, guys from Prestige Worldwide, at Vasil MBHL is where you want to direct your hatred here.
Yeah.
I'm just the host. I ask the questions. He's the one who gives the answers. Anything else before we jump down to E?
Nothing that I could think
Covered
of.
pretty much all of it,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Like I said, it's going to be a great race to the finish. I'm really looking forward to. I'm obviously excited that I'm playing in this league, but at the same time, looking forward to seeing some games and seeing how it all shakes out. E-League. We've got the birthday boys at the top of the list. Montreal Duds, OGC, Spartans, I-Has Ball Hockey, Brazzer Boys, Trailer Park Boys, the Muffalo Shavers, the Bearded Clams, a lot of sexual metaphors in this league. Wasted Robots finally bringing up the rear. This is a very interesting league just because you have some teams that are really, really strong at the top, and then you got some teams that are quite a bit weaker at the bottom.
Right.
It's going to be it might bring up an interesting matchup when the playoffs roll around, but let's just look at the top for a little bit right now.
Yeah.
You've got teams like Birthday Boys at 5-1-2, Montreal Duds at 5-2, OGC at 3-0-4. I mean, 4 ties.
4 ties, 0 losses. That's impressive.
That's it's impressive, but in the wrong way. 4 ties are gross. I hate ties. But those are, I think, for me, have to be the 3 top teams.
Easily.
If you had to pick one out of these 3, who stands out for you?
The Birthday Boys obviously are in first place, so they stand out, and it's what stands out for me with them is their offensive ability. A lot of the same guys as Los Pipos. Another guy I've mentioned often, Frank Maganello, and they're all a bunch of French, so they're used to playing in the high divisions together, and I'm not surprised to see them do this well, and I'm actually surprised with how little they're scoring. They're actually winning games by defense and by far the least goals against in the league.
It's very impressive to be
Joel Belzila nets, actually, yeah, that explains it. He's a really, really, really good goalie.
Still, I'm just saying. I mean, 15 goals against in 8 games. I mean, you're allowing less than 2 goals a game.
Yeah.
That's nothing to shake us. That's not. That's something. That's something you don't see no matter how good a goaltender is, right? So, and then going down with the duds and OGC. Now, OGC again, really weird statistic: 3-0-4.
3-0-4.
Now, those 4 ties either mean that you're this close to winning or this close to losing. So, if you had to pick one way or another to lean with these guys,
that the ties are games that they're not necessarily, that have no business being a part of, but Chris Cameron keeps them in it.
All right.
And they have the ability to elevate their game at certain moments and just score a few goals, bang, tie game, steal a point, go home.
So you think they're just one of those teams that's getting it done in extremis, but it's not exactly a team that's a top contender?
No, I mean, at the beginning of the season, I saw them as the middle of a pack team.
Yeah.
And they're 3 games.
Things are going well for them. Look, there's something to be said about the clutch factor and the way you play and you pull things out at the end.
Yeah.
That's something that comes into play, especially when you get to the playoffs, right? Yeah. And now they've put themselves in a good position. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah. And again, Mick Manassa plays for them as well. He's having a heck of a season there too. So that's huge for them. A good goalie and a good defenseman to make the plays. You're never going to be out of the game, and I guess that would explain why they haven't lost the game yet.
Moving on down, Spartans, IHAS, Ball Hockey, Brasser Boys, Trailer Park Boys, Muffalo Shavers. So those top out at 7. Again, it's a 10-team league, so we're figuring that 8 will make the playoffs. That leaves the Bearded Clams with 3 points and the Wasted Robots with 2 points. It's going to be tough for them to jump back into it. You noted some key matchups. Are either of these teams in those key matchups that you spotted?
Yeah.
I think they're pretty big for both those teams.
Huge game coming up next week between the Bearded Clams and the Muffalo Shavers. That is huge for the standings.
8-9, yeah.
8-9,
for Bearded
all
Clams,
of a sudden it's a 2-point margin after that.
Exactly. They need this win huge.
Exactly. Also, Wasted Robots are playing on the 13th against Bearded Clams, which is against three of the bottom ones.
Basically, whoever loses that game is almost guaranteed to be out at this point.
Now, Bearded Clams have a really, really, really good scorer in Justin Bedard. He's leading the league in goals. So I didn't know about that heading into the season. I thought they were going to have a bit of a harder time, and now that I'm seeing the schedule, they haven't had it easy. As we're seeing, they're going to play 2 of the bottom teams before the end of the season. So maybe those 2 wins
is their
right
time.
there.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm a little surprised with Trailer Park Boys and IS Ball Hockey. I kind of saw them as being the top teams in the division, but they're steadily 500, on pace to make the playoffs, and I think that's where they're going to be doing a lot of damage. Other key matchups I had, this is going to be an interesting one. OGC versus Birthday Boys.
It's 2 of the top 3 teams.
Yeah, 1 loss between the 2 of them.
Yeah.
And
also 6 ties, but
stellar goaltending on both ends with a lot of offensive ability as well on both ends. So it could either be a 1-1 tie, like it could be a 5-5 tie. I'm expecting a tie, to be honest, with the amount of ties they have. But
and it could be a finals preview because you got one team from Conference A, one team from Conference B. So I mean, these are definitely the top 2 favorites in each conference, I guess. Right. But like we all know, and we've all played enough playoff games to know that just because you're the top team in the regular season doesn't mean you're guaranteed any spot anywhere. We looked at some key matchups. We looked at kind of how the situation has changed from what you expected it to be. Give me some top players that we didn't know about at the beginning going into the season, or guys that have stepped up so far. You mentioned a few again, but let's get a few more.
I've mentioned these guys in the beginning of the show as well because it's obvious to me. I know that they're going to be the top guys. Ryan Gore leading Spartans in scoring. That we didn't mention them, but they're over 500, top 4. They're in a good spot. Corey Steger's putting up really good numbers for IHAS Ball Hockey. He usually plays more, but in the summer he runs a business, so he's a little bit less available, and it's nice to see that he's still fully committed to this team that he's played for the last 5 years. And again, really, really good numbers. And another one for Birthday Boys, JJ Costantini. So I would see it, the scoring title / league MVP would be a race between those 3 guys.
All right, so we'll then pick one. Again, let's make some enemies here, Vasil. It's just me and you, so let's make some enemies. If you had to pick one guy to win the scoring title.
Well, Corey's a good friend of mine, and I see him keeping up this pace, but I also see JJ stepping up and really, really turning on the Jets the last half of the season.
So we got from 3 to 2. Now you got to pick one of the 2.
I'm going to say JJ.
All right, I like it. He's going against his friend. That's what I always believe, too. You got to give him hell.
Yeah.
Because that way, even if they win, you're happy for him, and if they lose, well,
then I was right.
Then you were right, exactly. You win-win either way. That's it. Okay, again, now 10-team league. two teams at the bottom. They're both pretty far back. I mean, they're both at least 4 or 5 points back.
Yeah.
Do you see the standings finishing the way they are for the Bearded Clams and the Wasted Robots, or do you think there's one or even two of those teams that can jump into the playoffs?
It's going to be really tough for the Wasted Robots, but I know they can do it because they've played in this type of division before and they have the offensive weapons, especially in Shane Renault. But it's going to be a really uphill battle for them. I mean, they're even a game behind. Both them and Bearded Clams are a game behind Trailer Park Boys and Buffalo Shavers. So it's a tough road to climb, but it's not impossible.
If you had to pick.
If I had to pick, I would say Bearded Clams are going to pass the Buffalo Shavers and steal a spot.
Oh, wow. All right. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
so then that key matchup you mentioned
Is
looming
really
even
big.
more big. So
Yeah.
we'll know then if you were right or wrong, basically, more or less.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on E before we go down to F?
Yeah, there is one, and I don't mean to throw them under the bus. I'm really impressed with how they're doing, but I am unexpected for Montreal Dust to be doing so well. Based on, like we mentioned earlier in the first episode, they're top heavy. Their best players are really elite players, but they don't have that many of them. So to see them compete with so many well-balanced teams is surprising for me.
Do you think they'll be able to maintain that pace?
Not the same pace, but I would assume they're going to stay in the top half.
All
But
right.
I don't see them being heavy favorites going into it.
We'll have to see. I mean, right now they're tied with OGC for the top of Conference B.
Right.
And the next team, again, Conference B is pretty well balanced. You go from 10 to 7 from
Yeah.
top to bottom. So everything's still in play. But 2 losses for the Duds, 4 ties for OGC.
Ends up being the
Those
same.
things will balance each other out. But if it finishes that way, the Duds will be on top.
Right.
Jumping down to F. We've got the Lads at 10 points, GK Light at 9, Brotherhood at 8, the Wash-Ups at 7, Riviera Boys at 5, and the Ballers at 3. Really a steady progression from top to bottom, but again, the last 2 teams are kind of, just hanging around there. But let's start at the top. We've got the Lads with 10 points at 5-1, GK Light at 4-2-1. For me, these are probably the 2 best teams
Right.
in the league. Would you agree
They
with
would
that?
be on paper beforehand, before anything happens. They would already be.
And so let's talk about it. We looked at this league before we got this far,
Yeah.
early on. How have things changed, if at all, or is this exactly as you thought it would play out?
It's similar to what I would have thought, but I saw the Riviera Boys being ahead of the Wash-Ups. Based on the experience factor and them having the top scorer in the league and Steph Chaput. They're just 2 points behind. They play each
Yeah.
other and they're tied.
I
you
mean,
know?
defense seems to have been a problem for them
Yeah.
so far in this season. They've
Yeah.
allowed 40 goals in 8 games. I mean, that's worst in the league. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not what you need to.
It's not terrible when you have guys like Chaput that could score that many points,
That's it.
but you're not going to win that many games that way, and that's why they're 3 games under 500 right now. The way it stands, this division, I would assume bottom 2 don't make it, top 4 go through, or the other variant is that the top 2 get a bye and bottom 4 play. So either ways, I wouldn't think any team is necessarily in trouble. I'm a little sad to see the Ballers so low because I know a lot of the guys on the team and I like a lot of them. I like how they play, and I watched them play GK Light. They lost by a goal in the last minute. I feel like they deserve a little better than what they're doing now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them turn it around. I also the Lads at 5-1 is not surprising. They're really, really, really good, and they only added guys from last year. So having a steady core and then adding talent to it after winning a championship is, it's a
the
recipe for success.
That's right. It's a
Yeah.
great recipe for success.
Yeah.
Any key matchups
Yes.
through the rest of the way? I mean, with the league this small
Yeah.
and this condensed, especially for the top 2/3 of the league, you got to have a lot of key matchups.
Yes. Now, I'm not worried about the Ballers. Like I said, I'm sad to see them this low, but I think they could make it happen. So any matchup for them is a big game here on in with 6 games remaining.
Whether it's playoff implications or not, like you said, let's say
Yeah.
they all make it in.
Yeah.
You just need to rebuild that confidence.
Exactly. They've played together for a long time, so they know they can. Now, the matchups that I find really interesting are going to be the Lads versus GK Light, which is
Top 2 teams. Yeah.
today, actually. Hope we'll see the results from that. That would
Yeah.
be a really hard-fought battle. And the other one is also Lads versus Brotherhood, who, in my opinion, have the best goalie in the league, and he's one of the reasons they're doing so well. I'm assuming he'd be able to neutralize the Lads' offense, but then that matchup of Nicolas Baudet versus Phil Matthew is just... It's a great goaltending matchup, so that would be a really interesting
and
game to see.
those are the top 2 defensive teams in the F
Right,
League.
right.
One team's allowed 12 goals, the other one's allowed 11. The next closest one is 24,
Yeah,
which is double.
they're way
so
ahead.
I mean,
Both guys,
it's-
both goalies are
both
just so
goalies
much
are
better.
great. the defensive structure is probably where it needs to be as well.
Yeah.
So it's might not see too many goals in that matchup, but it'll be a good game. Hard.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get two very good defensive teams or two great goalies, and then suddenly it's like a 7-6 game.
Yeah.
Just completely defies
Everything- yeah,
expectations.
exactly.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, also looking at the matchup, if Brotherhood wins that game, they passed the lads for first place,
Yeah.
as the standings are right now,
Yeah.
obviously. So that's a big matchup. I mean, home ice, well, not home ice, but
Yes.
having that.
Such as it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's especially with only 2 periods. It's it's not like you're getting the last change or anything.
Yeah, if you're
It's
forced
not
to play a mini game, you get the additional timeout. It's a little
worth it.
factor, but I mean, you also have the confidence going in, knowing that you're the top team. So it could be huge for them.
Any other key matchups that jump out for you? Or are those the
Not
big ones? It's
particularly,
really
'cause
at the
they
top.
play each other so many times that it really depends on what the standings look like when they're playing each other.
I guess we'll have a better idea when we get to the end of the season what the real
Exactly.
key matchups are going to be.
Right.
How about some top players, some guys that have caught your eye?
Yeah, I mentioned him before. Steph Chaput, played against him a few years ago for Forefathers. He hasn't been around for, I believe, the last 2 summers, but he's leading the league in scoring. He's a heck of an offensive talent, and he has a brother, Mike Chaput, who isn't playing that much.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming when those two are on, they're really the class of the league. Other than that, Marc-André Paulin, we mentioned in the first episode for the lads. He's the guy they added since last summer, and he's so fast, so good that he's been maintaining those crazy numbers he's been putting up. So I see him, Steph Chaput, being at the top. And as far as I mentioned him before as a breakout player, Matthew Abbott for Brotherhood. I mentioned him for Old School, but he's played the definition of a breakout player. He's playing on several teams. He's making a name for himself.
He's a hot property.
Yeah, and he's averaging 1.5 points a game. He's leading that team in scoring, so I see him as being one of the most valuable players to his team, other than the goalie on that team, obviously.
All right. Well, final thoughts on the F League.
It's tight. It
It is tight. It is really tight. I mean, look, even like you said, Riviera boys, ballers, you don't expect them to be down there.
Yeah.
They are, but there's still time to turn it around, and it's very close. They're all playing against each other. Just
Yeah.
need a little bit of momentum, and things can change right away.
Exactly.
Guys, this was a bit of a shortened episode. Eagle, what are we doing on time here? 26 minutes. So, this was quicker than we've usually done now. There's a couple of things. Obviously, we didn't mention all the teams like we did in the past episodes. That's normal. That's you get further along. Some teams are just a bit further out, and we're kind of trying to focus on the more interesting stories within the divisions. It doesn't mean the guys we didn't mention suck, or that we're not going to hear from them, or that they won't make the playoffs, or maybe that they would even win the championship. It just means that we're trying to focusing on the things that pop out and catch our eye, and we hope that's what you guys are interested in as well. We're going to be coming back next week. We're going to go look at another 4 leagues, so the next 4 leagues down the list. Again, same type of format. We're going to follow up and see where they are vis-a-vis where we saw them at the beginning. Go look at some surprises, some key matchups down the rest of the way that Vasil will pull out for us to look at. Some top players, some guys that jump in. Really, it's just a follow-up, and now that we're getting closer and closer to that playoff time, everything's exciting. Everything's
more
crazy.
exciting.
It's going to be good. Hopefully, we'll have a full roster here. We've got a new member to the team.
Yes, Chris Clément,
There you
captain
go.
of the lads for the first place in the F League. Great guy, incredible hockey knowledge, knows everything there is to know. He's also a timekeeper, so it's going to be really nice to have his insight. And he's played in the top leagues, the middle leagues, some of the lower leagues at times, but he knows pretty much everyone there is to know, so it's going to be really nice to hear what he has to say.
So you're seeing that the cast is growing. We're still finalizing who's going to be involved in this thing, but it's going to be a fun ride the rest of the way. Like I said last week, this is the best time of the year. It is for all you guys who are playing, but it's also for us.
Yep.
There's a lot of excitement for us to follow on, and so we're going to keep doing that as we come in week after week after week after week. That's it from us here at the third period. Thank you, Vasil. Thank you, Eagle. Thank you, Sportira, for housing us. We will be back next week, but until then,
Good night, NBHL.
he nailed it. One try.